Tonight, I want to tell you a quiet story. Not a story of battles or arguments, but a story of small, gentle lights in a dark world. A story of shared bread, open doors, and people who believed that no one should be left alone. Long ago, in the busy cities of the Roman Empire, life could be hard and lonely. Streets were crowded, noise was everywhere, and many people lived in poverty, sickness, or fear. There were no hospitals as we know them, and if you were poor, widowed, or sick, there was not much help. In the middle of this world, a small and unusual community began to grow. They gathered quietly in homes, in courtyards, and in hidden upper rooms. They followed the teachings of Jesus, a Jewish teacher from Judea, who had spoken of love, forgiveness, and a God who cared for the least and the lost. These people started calling each other brothers and sisters, even when they were not related. They came from different backgrounds, different languages, different levels of wealth, and yet they sat at the same table. They shared simple meals, prayed together, and told each other stories about Jesus and the hope He had given them. One of the most beautiful things about these early communities was how they treated their belongings. They began to see everything they owned, not just as mine, but as ours. Ancient accounts describe how many of them sold land or possessions and brought the money to be shared with anyone who had need, so that no one among them would be left hungry or without help. Imagine a small room lit by oil lamps. The air smells of bread and herbs. Around a low table, people sit close, passing food from hand to hand. In the corner, an older widow smiles as a basket of bread is placed in front of her, knowing that tonight, like every night, she is not forgotten. Widows and orphans were especially vulnerable in the ancient world. Without a husband, a father, or a family, it was easy to fall into deep poverty. The early Christians believed that God cared in a special way for widows and orphans. So they organized themselves to make sure these people were fed, clothed, and loved. They even created special roles, like deacons, whose responsibility was to oversee the daily distribution of food and support. These helpers collected gifts, kept lists of those in need, and visited homes to make sure no one slipped through the cracks. It was practical, simple, and deeply kind. The kindness of these communities did not stop at their own members. They also welcomed strangers and travelers. In a world without hotels on every corner, a long journey could be dangerous and exhausting. Christians opened their doors, offering water, food, and a place to rest. Picture a traveler arriving, dusty and tired, at the edge of a town. He has walked for days. He does not know anyone there. But he finds a small house where a lamp burns late into the evening, and the people inside invite him to enter, to sit, to eat, and to sleep in safety before continuing his journey. As the centuries passed, this spirit of hospitality and care began to grow into something even more organized. Christians started building places not only for worship, but for healing and shelter. In the 4th century, leaders like Basil of Caesarea helped create large complexes where the poor and the sick could come for free care. Some historians call Basil's foundation in Caesarea one of the first true hospitals. There, physicians and nurses treated patients, and a whole community of men and women dedicated their lives to serving the sick and the needy. It was a new idea, a place where anyone, not only the rich, could receive care and compassion. Around the same time, quiet communities grew in the countryside. Monasteries. These were places where monks and nuns lived lives of prayer, study, and simple work. But they also became centers of hospitality and mercy, opening their doors to travelers, the poor, and the sick. Inside the monastery walls, life followed a peaceful rhythm. The day began and ended with prayer. In between, there was time for copying books, tending gardens, baking bread, and caring for guests. Infirmaries and guest houses offered beds, warm food, and a calm environment where people could rest and heal. Imagine walking into such a place. You feel the coolness of stone under your feet. Hear the gentle echo of footsteps in the hallway, and smell bread being baked in the kitchen. A monk with kind eyes guides you to a simple bed with clean straw and a blanket. And for the first time in many days, you feel safe. Over time, these small acts of love, sharing food, caring for widows, welcoming travelers, building places of healing, spread across many lands. The Christian vision of caring for the poor and the sick inspired countless hospitals, shelters, and charities in the centuries that followed. What began as a tiny community in ordinary houses quietly developed into a global network of mercy. Even today, in many parts of the world, hospitals, schools, and relief organizations trace their roots back to this early Christian impulse, to love one another, especially the most vulnerable. The world still carries the imprint of those first shared meals and those first open doors. As you listen to this story, perhaps lying in your bed, eyes growing heavy, you can picture those small gatherings long ago. A simple table, a shared loaf of bread, a group of people who believed that every human life mattered, and that love should be shown not only in words, but in daily, practical care. Their world was far from perfect. There was still suffering, injustice, and pain. But in the middle of that, they chose another way, a way of gentleness, generosity, and quiet courage. Tonight, you have walked, just for a moment, through their world. You have seen a glimpse of a community where no one was supposed to be left alone, where the poor were honored guests, and where the sick
were treated with tenderness. You have heard how soft acts of kindness can ripple out through centuries. As you drift toward sleep, let this thought stay with you. In every age, even in difficult times, there are people who decide to build little circles of light, places of welcome, care, and hope. The early Christians did this in their houses, in their cities, and in their monasteries. And the warmth of their love has reached all the way to you, here, in this quiet moment. Rest now, knowing that across history, countless small acts of goodness have been woven together into a long, gentle story. A story of shared bread, open doors, and a love that chose to care for the least. Good night.